Hey everyone, welcome to Prepare to Go There. My name is Peter Burchfield. I'm the host of this self-leadership podcast, and I'm also the creator of the Pioneer of the Year course. Thanks so much for sharing a little bit of your future Friday with me. And this is going to be an awesome coaching conversation to help us pioneer the year 1 week at a time. I'm going to dive right in because I have an amazing friend who is a great leader. His name is Josh Callender. He is the executive coordinator at Dwelling Place Church. And I want to kind of have a conversation with him, interview him about all of the nuances he's navigating right now as a team translator. And I'll explain what I mean in a little bit. But it is so good to see friends in the chat. Welcome to Sarah Joy and Adrian and the others that are watching the replay. We really appreciate it. Let me pull Josh in, and we'll begin together.
Yo, yo,
Hey, brother.
yo. What's up, man?
Welcome to Prepare to Go There.
Thank you for having me, man. This is exciting. This is very fun.
Dude, there are so many wonderful stories attached to you, and you've done so much. I mean, my claim to fame with you is that you're this epic world traveler, and
Wow.
that you're this fearless kind of globetrotter, and you just kind of take on all of these team trips with your church community, and you're also the guy behind the scenes that's kind of keeping things on track. But go ahead and introduce yourself to this leadership community, and tell us what you're excited about these days. I'll let you give kind of the big announcement there,
Yeah.
but
Well, first off, that's a very kind, I'll let you keep that introduction. Basically, I'm good with that. I don't think I'm going to top that. But no, I work at Dwelling Place Church. I am the executive coordinator. We have that title because I'm involved in so many things. That's the only way to keep it a broader title. That was a Pastor Jeff Needham special name right there. But I work very closely to Pastor Jeff and Pastor Elizabeth, and a lot like what we're going to talk about today. Oftentimes, it is translating the heart of what the leader has, what their vision is, and how to create a kind of more of a roadmap for that. And I also, along with my fiance, Adrienne Moreno, and 35 days, Peter, but who's counting?
come on.
But she and I will be leading a night school that will be starting soon. And in that school, again, is going to be a lot. It's going to be a lot of what we're going to be talking about today. And it's just awesome. And then we have churches all over the world, and I do get a privilege and the honor to go and serve them. Our heart is to serve them where they are. And honestly, they serve us, and it's just a family, just as it should be. So it's a lot of fun. But yes, the big announcement is that God is very good, and He brought the very best to my life. So
Come on, getting married.
5 weeks away.
Let's go.
Game changer. Let's go. So
I'm so happy for you, bro.
Thanks, man.
You got a lot of irons in the fire, and that can be a challenge in and of itself to navigate and stay focused on giving each one the proper attention they need. But you're also right in the middle of a team that has a lot of irons in the fire, and so that just multiplies the complexity and the opportunity. But we got to really have a clear headspace and a really vibrant heart, and we got to skill up so that way we're providing the right leadership for the moment at hand. I did want to give you a shout out before we go. I'm wearing your merch, man.
Wow.
So Jeff, long story short, Jeff actually had a kind of serendipitous time to hang out, with me and my wife here at the house, and he said, "Hey, take this." So I found out that this was actually your creation. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct.
So you really are a pioneer at heart, and thank you, man. We're gonna dive into the quiz because I want everybody to know that you can pioneer this year. It doesn't matter if you have been feeling stuck in a repeat year cycle. You really can get out of that rut, and you can have a year like no other. But you're going to have to start identifying with pioneering leadership, which we'll talk about in a little bit. So we, Sarah Joy and I, my wife, we created a quiz to help people start identifying with pioneering leadership. It's called your Pioneer Archetype. It describes your leadership approach to things like the future and team building and workflow, and really just clarifies all of your signature strengths that you're bringing to the future frontier with you. And Josh, you actually took the
I
quiz.
I did it.
So I'm so interested, man. Take us through the process.
I've been looking down at my results, but I will tell you this to yourself and your wife's credit. It is hard to do a quiz that is not long, because a lot of it's easy to make a quiz extremely long and extremely detailed, but it really wasn't that long, number one, but it is freaky how accurate this is. So I am going to tell you, I read through it, I was like, Peter, you weren't supposed to know me like that. Like, hey, man. Like it is fantastic. So if you are listening, you need to do the quiz.
Okay, Josh, so what I want you to do is just kind of walk us through your own thought process. Tell us your result. Tell us what interests you, but try not to give away the coaching part, because I want each person to read it for themselves when they take it.
I mean, so like when I took it, I because it's easy to say, like, I'm all these things, but really you got to know yourself and be honest with yourself as you take it. And so you want me to tell you what I am, right?
Yeah.
So I am a Pathfinder. Okay.
Come on.
And so just, me and Peter, we get each other. Now, Peter, I feel like I'm learning more about myself, because the more I get to know Peter, I'm like, yes, this is who I am. And but I would say like when I read it, there were a few things that I was so like, oh, how did he know? Like, are you okay with me mentioning like one thing?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like there was one thing, like hyper focused. If I so at work, my cousin and a few other people will call me a robot, because if there is something, and I don't consider myself a detailed person, but if there is something like I cannot get the most, like sometimes it's not even the most important detail, I will hit a wall and I'm like, but and like they can like watch me glitch out. It's really fun. And so they're like, Josh, you're doing your robot thing. I'm like, they call me Robo-B. They call me Robo-B. Robo-B, stop it. I'm like, okay, pull back. So that one, and really talking about mapping through complicated terrain, that one spoke to me a lot, because I definitely, if it's so simple, it doesn't always interest me. I definitely like create, like finding a new way to like, okay, if there's not a trail, let's go for it. Let's make a trail now. So but no, I mean, I think this is just phenomenal. So I don't want to give too much away, because I do think people, they need to do this. It's going to help you. I actually, like, every time I read it, I'm like, gosh, he knows me. So again, it was not a long quiz. I was actually surprised how detailed and how well descriptive it was. So again.
So what you'll get, I want everybody to take the quiz, because it's going to encourage you with some fresh language about your own unique leadership approach. It's going to help you better approach the future with life planning and leadership. And you can find that. There's a link at the description of this video. You can also go to pioneertheyear.com, and there will be a button to take the quiz there as well. And what you'll get is your quiz results, a summary of your unique Pioneer archetype, and then you'll get a coaching action plan just for you, for your archetype. So that way you can get going, or you can level up and go from there. Joshua, is there a action point? Is there an action step in that plan, like one action point that stood out to you the most? Because Pathfinders have that strategic edge in their leadership. And so they're all about, taking on complicated challenges and then simplifying them for the rest of the team to come and join them later on. So you do a lot of your best work alone, but you are still very relational, because and your motivation is not to get away from people. It's actually to make things easier and better and smoother for people. Is there one action step in the coaching plan that jumped out at you?
Oof, they all do. But if I'm gonna pick one, because I'm an idea guy, so I can get lost in the idea, and so I would say, and also I would say I combine that with I naturally hate failing. Like I hate it. Like I love succeeding. I love it. I love it. I love it. But if
that's why you're a Pathfinder.
And so, but because the idea is so big, I want it to be perfect. I'll be stuck in the idea stage and not make decisions.
Oh, wow.
So
that's really good.
I would say that I've learned that about myself over time. So that was another one time I was like, Peter, stop looking to my life so well from this quiz. So that one really kind of got me. And so I have been adjusting and I have been.
So there's actually, man, that's a really good point, because a lot of Pathfinders, they are willing to do thorough research. They want to get into the weeds of everything. They want to understand it all. They want to go through all of the contingencies. They love threat analysis. They love working on all of the options, 1, 2, 3. But ideas expire, and we have to learn how to make a decision and bring it back to the team and help them get there. So that's really good. There's actually a module in the course, Pioneer of the Year. Module 2 is dedicated to the Pathfinders. It's called Get Going, because so many of us can get stuck in that analysis paralysis where we're having so much fun just going into the future conceptually that we're not putting in the work to bring people into the future with us in reality. So everyone go take the quiz and get your free coaching action plan to go with it. It's just so important because we're learning how do we pioneer this year. And, you know, everyone's going places, but they've got to prepare to go there. And that's why I wanted to bring up this conversation about pioneering leadership. And it's the ability to turn repeat years into new frontiers for your personal life, for your company, for your community. You know, even teams get stuck in their ways, and we need pioneering leaders that are going to navigate and create the future of what we do. And then we're going to add a new word, which is translate. We have to translate that future back to the team so that way they understand what's important, what's at stake, and what's needed to go make it happen. And so I'll just kind of show the slides first so we kind of get a runway, and then we'll take off into this conversation. We're going to figure out 3 ways that leaders can better translate on their teams, you know, to overcome communication gaps, to, you know, get through the roadblocks, to make sure that there's alignment on your team. And so the first one is translating the future into a clear focus. That's so difficult, but we need to talk about it.
Yeah.
The second one is translating a dream to a team. This is the idea of scaling your team, scaling your organization, scaling what you do from the founder into the foundation. And we'll talk about how do you build a foundational team that can actually be a support system for the entire movement. And then the third one is really about the people that you're serving, and that's translating the culture into the calendar. And so what we'll kind of do is start with the individual and work through future into focus. Then we'll move to the team, kind of internal team talk, and then we'll finish with, you know, everybody we're serving on the community level. So Joshua, why don't you kick it off, bro, and tell us why do you like this metaphor of a translator? And hopefully you can share maybe some of the stories about traveling cross-culturally, because I think your travels are a great example, a great metaphor, a great, tool to help us better understand why this matters.
Yeah. Well, I believe that, wherever you live, and there is a culture set. You are in a culture. Um, if you live, we live in the greater Houston area. There is a culture to Houston, Texas. If you live in Mumbai, India, there is a culture in Mumbai, India. Uh, and so wherever you go, your friend group has a culture, whether you realize it or not. There is a culture. Um, the culture it's always there. Now, as to what it is really like that is what everything. That's what we're going to talk about more. Is what is your culture? And I would say, I wrote out a few things of why why is it important to talk about culture. And so I just did a Google, why is culture important? And literally all these things came up. Of culture gives you a sense of belonging. It gives you similar language to those around you. It is a reflection of a community. Culture reveals what a group of people value. It also puts language to what they value. It involves the why we do it and how we do it. And why you do something and how you do something is as important as what you're doing. And it always involves others. Culture is never just a one person thing. Culture, it always involves other people. And so, as a translator, you have to be able to explain why we are doing what we're doing and how to implement the why. So you have to be a good translator. And so, to back up real quick, so yes, I've gotten to go all over the world, oftentimes by myself, and so that is it's so much better to travel with people. And so I actually will get to that later about going with people. But there's definitely been some times when you're so out there. You're like, I don't even know. There's been 2 times in my life I can see the plane landing and I can look at my maps. And I think I was in Siliguri, India, and I was like, I remember thinking like, oh my gosh, I am so far from home right now. And I just couldn't believe, like, I looked on the map. I was like, my knowing of, like, 'cause normally you can zoom out of Google Maps. It's always Western Hemisphere. It's always Texas. It's always, etc. This one I was like, I have never really even zoomed in on this area before. And the other time I was in the jungle of Malaysia, and I was like sweating, like just like where am I right now? I need to figure out how to get back. Like, I thought I had the first time I had the thought, it was in Malaysia. I thought, if I was in an emergency to get home, it would take me so long to get home right now. Like, you're just out there. And so one really funny story is, I remember I was with a friend named Brian, and I was helping him on a ministry trip, and we were in Norway, and we're on the water. This is when you're just not in Texas anymore. You're on a river restaurant, like you're on a restaurant on a river, eating reindeer. And I remember him and I looked at each other like, where are we right now? Like,
Yeah.
it was a bizarre moment. And that one I always think about when I think of funny travel moments. I think of that. I think of when I was in this really small town in Japan, and I'm sharing a room with a guy from Hong Kong, and both of us, thankfully I'm shorter than him, so it was better for me. But when you open the restroom, it was like these small, like the restroom was maybe like 6 foot wide, but it was like everything was waterproof, because like it was so small, they just assumed you were going to splash everywhere, and you're like, where? And like who lives like, it was just another one of those, whoa, okay, I am not home anymore. But I would say from traveling, those are just funny stories. But like, what I always appreciate about traveling is that, again, you see the beauty in other cultures, because because no culture is perfect. There's no national level culture that's perfect. There's no city culture that is perfect. But there are things to always take away and like, wow, that is where they're amazing at. It's really
Yeah.
easy, so like I when I go places, I typically notice like where I try to find the beauty in everywhere I go. I think that also makes you appreciate and make you enjoy where you're going. But you'll just go somewhere and you'll notice how they care for like their relatives that are older. Like that's just like at another level. You're like, wow, that's legacy. That's special. But it's also easy to point out, like, okay, but they do that, but they're also like the most aggressive bunch of people, like, so you just can point out those kinds of things that you appreciate what you have more, and in some ways it makes you grow more, and you're like, okay, I need more of that value in my life.
That's
So
so good, man. So let me ask you, when you're out there traveling cross culturally, did you ever feel like an outsider before?
almost always, number one, I would say, it's hard for me to think. I think most of the time I actually think I'm like I'm so out there right now, because I tend to go to places that are, one, a much stronger culture, because there's everyone has a culture, but like Japan, I would describe, they're not a melting pot. That is a strong culture. And so when you're in Japan, I remember myself and my uncle were walking around the streets of Tokyo, and people are not talking. It's thousands.
Mm,
It's the biggest metropolis of people to ever
mm.
exist. Is Tokyo, Japan. But you could be in this part where, like, again, in that part there might be like thousands of people walking by, but no one's talking to each other. But
Wow.
my uncle and I are talking, and we're the loudest ones out of thousands of people. We're like, we looked at each other like, we stand out like a sore thumb around here. And I think one
Mm.
time I got off the plane in Kenya, the first time I got to Kenya, and and they're holding up signs, and they told us, be careful, someone might see your name written and write it down and take you. I was like, oh gosh. And so
What?
thankfully the right person got us, but it was just kind of oh.
So that's the point. And man, I'm so just mind blown right now how quickly and easily you're just name dropping all these different nations. I mean, I've already seen mental pins in different continents as
Yeah,
you've just been talking. And what a gift, man, that you've been
yeah,
able to experience the world like that. But like you said, culture is so important. And what a translator is just a metaphor that we're using for the kind of leaders that are going to translate the culture to other people
yeah.
and offer belonging, offer the, help me, what else did we say?
We said belonging, language, reflection,
Like,
like it reveals the
yes,
values.
ownership and
Yeah,
being a reflection of the community at large and engagement. And so it's so important. People, they come into your team and they don't understand the culture yet. They are trying to figure it out. And it could be very nuanced and it could take years to really kind of figure out how this team functions if it were, just watching it
yeah,
like a foreign film with with
yeah.
no
No
subtitles.
subtitles.
and,
Yeah,
and so a leader comes in not to change people but to be a translator for people and to welcome them in to this team, to welcome them into this culture. And translators are constantly picking up on where people are coming from multiple sides, and then trying to get the team to work better together.
yeah.
And so I'm sure, Josh, there were moments where you were in a different culture and you missed a cue,
Oh
or
yeah,
maybe you offended someone by accident and you didn't know it, or maybe
Oh yeah.
you were trying to be nice and it kind of went south, and that's just part of the fun
Yeah.
of putting yourself out there.
Yeah.
But I want you to kind of talk about how you felt literally when you had a guide, when you had a translator, when you had someone that you knew by name that would say, hey, I will pick you up in the morning. I will, run around the city with you. I will guide you through. I'll give you the ins and outs. It's kind of part translator, part tour guide.
Yeah.
But just kind of describe how important that kind of person is, both in travel, but more specifically for the team.
Yeah. Well, in travel, there's there's a safety immediately. And so you could say it that way. There's a safety. I was in Calcutta, India with a good friend named Mark, and he's showing me around, and we made a deal that because he's Indian, but he also he grew up also he knew a lot of people in the West, and so he knew, and so I just told him, like, I'm gonna trust you. You tell me if I can do it, I'll do it, or if I can eat it, I'll eat it, or if I can drink it, I'll drink it. And actually, he got chai on the side of the road, and he gave it to me, and he's drinking it, and I'm seeing, like, this is kind of a funny story, but I'm seeing hairs in it, and I'm like, I just started doing that. I don't do that. And so, but he's drinking it, and so I'm like, man, we just had this conversation. And so, but I was like, all right, it's on the side of the road, whatever. I'm like blowing the hair, so I never drank the hair, but I finished it. It took me a long time, and he tells me, he goes, did you like it? And I was like, yeah, just, I'm not big on the hair. He goes, there was hair in it? And so apparently he didn't know there was hair. And I was like, oh no, this is not going to work. But other than that, he kept me safe. There were times he said, don't eat it. And I was like, okay. And and there was he was able to explain the nuances and how the city worked and the culture. So to break that down to a team level, I would say, because every team will have different values, and obviously I strongly believe in my values, and I believe that's the right way, but everyone will have different. I actually think most people, this is like already a mind bomb to people, because I think most people don't know what their values are. I think they just know I think they only know what they've seen before, and that's the only way to do it. So why change it? Also, they know how to get to a destination. And so that's kind of like, and I think this, the values is really the vehicle of getting you to a destination, getting you and others, you and your team, to a destination. And I think,
man, it's so powerful.
I think I'm excited to dive in more to this. This is going to be good. So I hope I'm answering your question right.
Absolutely. What we're saying is that leaders need to be good translators to the people on their team and to the people they're serving, so that way they're communicating with care, they're guiding people along, and a lot of damage can be done in the name of speed, in the name of conformity, or in the name of
burnout is like the new
results.
Avoiding that it's a big deal. It's a big deal. And also, I would say, just to add to all of this is, oh man, I had it, and then I lost it. But it was basically along the lines of that's it. Is the, I would say a lot of other generations, you could just say do this and they would do this. And I do think, especially our older generation has I think learned that between millennials and Gen Z, the just do it to do it, it no longer applies. Now the why am I doing it? And I think that is something why it's so important to know that now, because no, people don't just do just to do anymore. And so, sorry, cut you off, but anyway.
Oh, amazing. No, that's fire. And I think it's a really important distinction for translators on the team. Translators recognize that innate need of their team to understand the why. And they're going to go for the why and then bring that to the how. I love how you said values are the vehicle that move us as teams and communities towards the destination. So let's dive in to these 3 areas where translators are needed, 3 scenarios where we're going to be, running and gunning in a team environment.
Yeah.
The first one is really in our own strategic planning. How are we translating the things we talk about in the future to the things we work on day by day? And that can be really tough for teams to make that journey from what's possible eventually to what's imperative right now. Absolutely. And your team, y'all do a lot. You got a lot of irons in the fire. And so you actually serve your team as a voice of focus, and you're constantly helping the team adjust their focus. And you are, feeling the values, you understand the big picture, but you also are very connected to, all the fires that are coming up, all the curveballs that are happening, what's needed on the ground level. What are some of the things you're learning about how would you help your team translate, this is the big picture, but this is how we're going to focus on it right now?
Yeah. Well, I would say anytime there's a, we'll just say that anytime there's vision, vision always can be pointed to like a now situation though. And meaning and I'm gonna refer to 2 different styles constantly. There's a destination lens and a what did I put it as? Destination and a journey lens. And so I think, and I want to hit that during the team time more, but I do think if it's just a destination, it's going to be harder. It's going to be harder in a lot of ways to bring like the why into now and all that. But I think that you bring it into the now by okay. I think like this is something honestly I've really learned from Peter is by your just intentionality of how to you can't do everything, like I guess to say Rome wasn't built in one night. You have to find your way to keep stacking the bricks, and every day you can add a new brick to the wall and be building. So I do think that you have to have a strategic plan and realistic too, because again we'll get into it later about people, because I think a lot of this comes down to people. This is like a big thing, so I'm really excited about that. But I would say you have to bring it to a very small level of okay, like the little things always add up, and how we do the little things will always affect the big things. And so I think that comes into your meetings, that comes into your clarity of communication, that is going to go into your focuses and all that. And so again, it's kind of like painting a picture. You have to at least get an outline going. You have to, yes. Sometimes you go in with a pencil first, and you put in, the details aren't set, but hey, this is where this is looking like where it's going to go. This color will go here, et cetera, et cetera. So I hope that answers it well.
That's so good, man. Thank you. translators like you are always working in those two spaces at the same time. I did a podcast on Spotify and iTunes called Leading Yourself from Aspirational to Actionable. And I talk about, like an airplane flies, a few thousand feet up in the air, and then you got what's going on the ground level, and translators are somewhere in between.
Yep.
And there's always that high level vision of, what's important, what's possible, where we're going, in the future, long term. But you also have the ground level logistics, and you got people with boots on the ground that are waiting on communication. They're waiting on, hey, what are we working on today? What do we need to do? And hey, it doesn't feel important at the time, but when somebody's facing something, it's important to them. And so then, it's a big journey to go from, way up here to way down here all the time. And people in this role like you can often get vision vertigo because you're always zooming in and out. You can get kind of dizzy with the details, and you got like multiple scopes of conversation happening. And so that's why it's really important that we don't allow vague vision. We can't afford a vague vision, because if you're up here casting vision, on this big macro level, you have no idea how many people, projects, years that's actually affecting. Yeah. And so you've got to be really, really clear on the vision up at the macro level, and then figure out how are you going to use clear, concise language to bring that down to the next day, the next decision, and the next thing that needs to get done. And one of the things that I had to learn was to keep track of my own words and my own word count. Because I'm talking about vision, and man, there's so much to talk about because there's so much ground to cover, and there's so much possibility, and the sky's the limit, and blah, 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 blah. And I'm just all over the map. But then I have to realize for every one paragraph of vision, I don't know what the exact ratio is, but it's like one paragraph of spoken word equals 9 months of team in the trenches getting it done. Yeah. And so there has to be this awareness that vision and vision casting is a skill that you have to work at. And then for the translator, they have to absorb that big vision, whether you're middle manager, whether you're a coordinator, whether you're a department leader, whether you're an entrepreneur, whether you're, starting your own music label, whatever it is, you're going to have to translate what's out there in the future into a clear focus. Yeah. Because the daily timeline only has so many minutes to work on it. It's not hours in the day. It's literally, when it comes down to it, it is minutes of work sessions. 30 minutes here, 90 minutes there to meet, to collaborate, to accomplish. And we've got to be really clear. Okay, the reason I am confident that we need to talk about the budget is because I understand how it's being influenced and informed by our future. And when a translator speaks, they know, hey, I am speaking with context that you may not have. And I'm speaking to another team member as a peer, but you can trust me. It's like when you're going around India and the guy's like, it's okay to drink this. And, you know, what, like you trust him, not because you had the whole context, but because he told you what was cool for that moment.
Yeah.
And I think that's what translators need to bring is that real time direction, because they are sensitive to the fact that people don't have all the time in the world to learn a new language and to understand the whole vision and to get the whole picture. And that's what I tried to do. I was trying to educate my whole team and say, okay, you need to know everything I know and have all my context to be on this team. And I realized, oh, no, I'm the translator. I've been putting in the hours so that way I can help them be a part and be successful on this team in minutes. You know, I've done the heavy lifting to serve the team, and hopefully I become proof of concept and I become a good counselor for them. Yeah. So I'll turn monologue mode off.
No, but it's so good, man. It's so true.
Go ahead and kind of cross-examine any of that. Whether that's, where do you see these conversations happening? Is this a team meeting? Is it, how important is having those conversations?
Well, I think you nailed it in the beginning about the clarity of communication. I mean, it's just like you're in a battle. Typically, if you cut off communication or you make communication not clear, that is typically whoever controls communication wins. And so I have found, especially when there is a lot of vision and there is like, you are dreaming big, you're dreaming so big. You know, I think that when there is vague vision, or there is, you know, there's a lot left to interpretation or imagination, that I have yet to see it go really well. I have yet to see it go like, oh man, that really worked out. Like I would say when you can really, because that's something we can control. You can control communication. And I think a lot of us don't probably accept how much control we actually have on that, because, you know, maybe someone, you know, I do think there's a good portion on how it's received, but if you control how you say what you say and what you say, you've done a majority of the percent of work. And I do believe how you say something is as important as what you say. And I think most people, you got some people that are like computers. They're like, all that matters is what is said. And you got other people that hear far beyond the words that you're saying. You could say 3 words, but they actually heard 1,000 because of how you said it. And so everyone is so different. So communication, the clearer, simpler it can be, the more that will catch it. And you'll have much less messes to clean up after. I've been a part of many vision meetings, and then after that, it always leads. You know this, Peter. It always leads to at least 10 more conversations. One that like what you said, it leads to 9 months of work. You know, it's. I would just say the communication aspect of, you know, that's why you gotta know who you are. You've gotta know. You know, like the values you put on everything.
Yeah.
Because if you don't, you're just going to be you're going to be like the hamster on the wheel, just going and going. And until you figure that out, you're going to be in a lot of trouble.
Yes, man. So good. And values, another way to say it would be your principles, the principles you live by.
Yep.
But values actually frame up or sketch the vision that you're going to have and then you figure out how to translate that vision,
Yeah.
where we're going one day, who we're becoming on the way into the mission, which is what we actually need to do today. The mission never changes. We're going to stay on mission every day. If we do these habits, if we do these things consistently, we will accomplish the vision in the right time. I would say the two big shifts that I had to make when it comes to translating the future into a clear focus was, number one, I had to get better at written communication. I had to move all the things I was feeling, and I had to structure it into a clear format that other people could see, right? Write the vision down, make it plain so that others can run with it. And a lot of times we don't realize that communication is a form of leadership, that when you communicate, you're actually sending people in those directions. You know, the same way your words are kind of taking off, you're sending people with those words, both yourself, your peers, and, you know, others. And so you have to realize you have very influential words, and you've got to steer it correctly. And that is such a challenge for leaders who have all this pent up passion, and they want to get more done. And then they take on scope creep, where they assume they, you know, can do more in less time instead of being faithful with little over time. And it's about being really intentional, seeing the big picture and then breaking it down. And I think seeing that in writing really helps you visualize how much you're getting across, how much you're trying to translate. It could be very difficult for someone who doesn't speak that language naturally, try to process everything you're saying in their own context. And so, like you said, it's easier to translate fewer better. And then the second thing is the meetings. Like week in, week out, meetings are where this stuff happens. And so much can be won or lost. A lot of ground can be won or lost with the meetings that we have. It's the best, it's the high ground that we need to take in terms of leverage. I love how we're kind of taking this more military metaphor here. But it really is the high ground, because otherwise what you're doing is now you're trying to parcel out pieces of the plan in these one-on-one conversations, which can pigeonhole, which can create skews and distortions that other people can't follow. Maybe you said one thing to one person, you said something different to another person. They brought up another challenge that other people don't know about. So you're always out of sync. And I know we have apps, you know, that are gonna like sync us up, but there's nothing like as near to face-to-face conversation where you can clearly bring people back to the big picture plan and then work on that big picture plan in choice, intentional ways. What are some of the things you're learning as a translator? Do you lead the team meetings? Do you facilitate the team meetings? Do you follow up on the team meetings? What are some things that you're doing as an executive coordinator, kind of in that translator space for your team, to make sure that people really stay on the same page?
Yeah. Well, I actually have, I find this specific like category very fascinating, because it matters what your team is comprised of. So I have led a lot of volunteer meetings. I've done staff meetings, and honestly, you should probably go about them differently. I think ultimately, what is your goal of the meeting? You need to have a goal. If you have a goal-less meeting, you're not going to accomplish anything. So if the goal is connection, then make it about connection. If the goal is planning, make it about planning. The goal is about talking out vision and, maybe, how to come up with a, more like a better vision of the vision. Okay, great. If it needs to be, in some situations it needs to be all three. Okay, well then you have to plan accordingly. So I would say number one, if it's a team of volunteers, if you're leading a volunteer team, I will tell you from experience, they care more about vision and connection in the meeting time. They want more of that. But then when you get out of the meeting, though, if you're not following through with the plans and the and just different stuff like that, then they will fall off. But you have to at least once a month gather a volunteer group to get together because they're also carrying their own work, they're carrying their own family stuff going on, and because again, they're running off passion. Passion, like doesn't pay the bills. So they are there because they want to be. They would rather be there than anywhere else. So you have to make time for vision and connection. But if you're leading a staff team, which I think a lot of people on here it'd be more for that kind of group. If you're leading that, they are already in the vision. They're breathing it. They're living in it. And so what I would say, that is that meeting, you have to have some tasks to knock out. Because also, if you start having meetings where tasks aren't being accomplished from them, people are not going to believe in those meetings anymore. So then people are going to start equating that meeting with it's kind of becoming a waste of time. So also, if you're being paid, you have to be efficient with that time. You have to be you want to get the most out of what you're doing. So I would say, I've been in all those types of meetings, and especially when it is a paid deal, there has to walk away with more. You can't walk away with more questions than answers. If you walk away with more questions than answers, there was a major miscommunication, and that is not good. That is you are heading to a very you're just going to hit a dead end, and there's going to be a mess. So making sure it's very clear, precise, and again, people typically in those types of settings have more specific roles, and people, when they hear vision, they hear it in their role. So if you are, if you're a volunteer director and you hear something and about this event, okay, and you hear it, and your context, you're only seeing it. You're not seeing it's going to be a black, you're not here. You're like, how many people do I need? I need to cover that. You're already running your whole scenario. So you need to make sure, so it's just not like word vomit and, hey, go figure it out. Now, I do know that sometimes if it's you're in a pinch, you've got to just, we'll talk about trust with your leaders and all that. But there has to be more answers. There has to be more answers than questions. And I think that is usually a sign of a good meeting.
Yes. Man, that's powerful. I am keeping track of time. We've probably got about 10 minutes left. Okay. So we're going to just expedite the last two categories. Yeah. And just know, man, you got an open invitation. Let's just pick up on this conversation and keep going. I want to also give a shout out. Thank you to everybody who's been tracking in the chat. You've been watching this conversation. We want to answer your questions too. That's like why I show up live, is to work on your leadership with you in real time. So if you have a question for Josh or myself about this topic, translating culture for your teams, then let us know and we'll make sure that we can touch on as much as possible. You really segued perfectly into the next category, which is translating from a dream to a team. Yeah. And a better way to say it is from a founder to the future. From one person who is the iconic visionary leader, the founder of the team, of the organization. And then how do you actually translate one person's dream into a many-membered, interdisciplinary, skilled team? Because I believe every dream multiplies into a team, and that's a gift that we actually get to carry the culture together. And so just kind of rapid fire here, what are some of the things you're learning about, you're listening to your founder, Pastor Randy. He's spending a lot of time with you. He's not able to spend that amount of time with others.
Yeah.
And you're hearing his heart. You're also hearing the logistics. You're hearing the expectations. There's a lot of things that you're factoring in. And then you go out and you interact with the rest of the team. What are some things you're learning about just speaking on behalf of others, speaking on behalf of your leaders, bringing, concerns, ideas back to your direct reports? What is that like, actually filling that space in between the founder and the developing team?
Yeah. Well, complicated. Which is, hey, according to your quiz, I like complicated. So, but I would say, you kind of already said one of them. One of the main things you can never bypass is you have to spend time with people, because you have to get, if as a company, as a whatever you are representing. Even if you want to go down to a family model, for a family, you can't just say this is what we're going to do, but never being around them to show them how to do it. There has to be at least an allotted amount of time showing them what you do, how you do it, and you're explaining the why behind it. So time is, and that is the trickiest thing. Time is the most complicated part. But it's to me probably the most important part, because so I wrote this down: from one visionary leader to a team of pioneer leaders, it takes time. This doesn't happen overnight. So I think a lot of people, especially nowadays, want the overnight answer. And this typically, I mean, if it does, then you show me how. But the more people that understand the vision, and the more people that are activated, the less the leader will have to carry. And so you have to invest in people understanding the vision. So there is an investment in the vision aspect. There's an investment in making sure they understand the vision. They've got the vision. They can say it back to you. They've got the vision. But then there's another thing that you have to investing in them being activated. There's two different categories of investments that have to happen. And you will get out what you put in. And I love what you said. It's not just addition. When the more people you're able to, so if I get information from my leader and I'm now around other people, I am now, it's not just one person. If it's three people, I have multiplied. And I believe in multiplication. And if it's gone from a leader above me to three other people, that's actually more than multiple. That's not just like times two. That's like times four. And so a lot of people ask, so when you say invest, do you mean just time? No, I mean all the above. I mean time, money, resources, conversation, life. Like, you have to invest in people. And so time is your ally and enemy, and so you cannot waste it. And so you, as a leader, your job is to know when it's time to activate someone. I do think it's easy to just see talent and say, oh, they'll get the culture quick. But then a lot of times that creates way, way, way more problems, and then it should have. So I do think that's a big thing. I also think, in regards to this section, another big part, and I'm going to go to if you're like you're the founder real quick, is most of the time, unfortunately, people's vision is too small. And this is where I kind of wanted to hit on the destination lens and journey lens, is that their vision is a destination. and they see themselves only there. And honestly, number one, that's sad. That sounds very lonely. Sounds very
Mm-hmm.
lonely. And that says that, I would say number two, I would never be on that person's team because I would feel like I am totally expendable because this
Mm,
person's only goal is to be on the top of this mountain. And that
mm,
means I am a stepping stone as long as I am not like absolutely necessary for success, then I can get just kicked to the side. Just, I wouldn't put my family through that. I wouldn't trust, there's a lot of things when you join a team that, I would not trust that person. And so I believe too many people live in with a destination lens. And this is for all the founders out there that I would encourage you to put a journey lens on how you look at everything. Because when your
mm,
destination, you're only seeing where you're not. So then you're only going
mm.
to look at how I failed. You're only going to see,
Wow.
here, where did I write it down? I wrote it down somewhere. A destination will make you feel like you failed constantly because you're not there yet. You will be something as soon as you arrive. You will self-project your own feelings onto everyone around you. Everyone around you is just another tool for you. They're a stepping stone. And you might get where you're going, but you're gonna be alone. And
Mm,
I think uh, I believe in generations and walking together. I believe that's the way we were created to do it. And I think that's why there's a lot of actual civilizations that are still alive today because generations passed the baton well. Um, and I think we're in a country where we're learning to do that. We have not at all mastered that. But I think the journey mindset is just the complete opposite. Where is it? I would say it allows you to see how far you've gone.
mm.
You're allowed to. You can see how far you've
Wow.
gone. You can see the growth.
Yes.
You can see who is with you and how far they've come. You might get to where you see how they to help them along the way. You see people. And
Mm-hmm.
if you're trying to go somewhere, you have to see people. You have to see and when I say that, I mean you're seeing them like you're seeing their value. You're seeing who they are. Um, and I also think that when you are you have a journey mindset, you are okay. Like the destination, if you don't get there, it actually might be for someone else to get to and you're
Mm,
okay with that. But you can still see those people. You can
mm,
see people that you haven't met yet, and I think
mm.
that takes a lot of vision and a lot of security in who you are. But a truly big idea will always involve people that you have yet to see, and it will always
Yes.
involve people like that. And so I think so. I've kind of gone a little side to bring it back.
Powerful.
So I think that you have to spend time, but then once there's that time when you have to give them, it's like in a padded room that for like a kid when they're learning how to walk, you don't just throw them right out to like the deep end. You don't try to make it. You're not gonna have them walk by like knives and stuff like that. You're just trying to give them. You're creating trust between one another, but you're also creating a safe place because I mean, if someone doesn't fail, they're not trying. So
Mm,
you've got to give them room to try, and if they miss it, that's okay. It's not again. That's not like the end of the world. You didn't set them up for it to be that way. That would be not a good leadership tactic. So I think you do have to empower, but you have to empower people with the values that you carry. Otherwise, people are going to start creating their own value system within your value system, and that is just a recipe for collision.
yeah. And it kind of chips away at the journey mentality.
Yeah,
And then the only thing that, is like a band aid, it's a short term solution to just say, well, let's just be destination minded.
yeah,
And it's not journey minded, like you're saying, which is a healthier, more future focused, long term way to lead. Super
Yeah.
good, man. Wow, what an
Well,
awesome
and just to
distinction
add
there.
one more thing to that, why it's important, because ultimately, how you treat people determines the culture you create too. Because you
Mm-hmm.
can, like when people do good, it matters. When people do bad, it matters. So you reveal your culture mostly with how you treat people. And
Mm.
that is like, there's no other, like, you can say all you want. You can have, I got 20 culture points, but ultimately how people see it is, okay, through this culture, that's how they treat people. Through this culture concept, they treat people this way. That
Mm.
will always rest on people, and people can carry.
Ooh. Ooh. Wow. And it's crazy that other people from, let's say, an outside perspective can better summarize your culture than you just by seeing how you or your team are treating others.
Yep.
They're actually doing a better job at summarizing what the culture is about. We've got to be able to figure out, how do we summarize what we're going to be about, so that way we can intentionally treat others the way we want to be treated. Wow, man, that is really good. Okay, Sarah Joy's got a question. Josh, try to aim for like 30, 60 seconds
Yep.
here.
Yep.
Great question. She says, do you think a translator is useful for sharing frustrations between the leader and the team, or vice versa? So let's say you're in the mix, man, right? You're not only hearing about what needs to get done, but you're kind of getting, a pulse on everybody.
Yep.
Do you think a translator is useful for this, kind of stepping in more as a mediator, or do they just need to stay more objective minded?
I would say absolutely it's necessary, because um, um, your founder is used. I'll say it this way: their founder is always a stronger personality. Especially if by this point you've got a founder, translator, people, that means you've got layers of people. That means the founder is never not a stronger personality, and they are already tracking on so many other things.
Yeah.
And honestly, most people don't know. Even as a translator myself, I have to, my job is, I have to figure out what they're thinking about before I bring up what I want to bring. If I'm just coming in with tasks, I actually can easily just stress them out or whatever. So I would say yes, to keep the answer short. Yes, because typically it really takes someone that can figure out where they're at before just bringing up, hey, but like, you can't just barge into the office and say, just so Sarah Joy's really upset with you, Peter, and you did this, and or she's not understanding, even though you made it clear. Also, why it's important, I'll just my last bit is that sometimes I can answer. A lot of times, a translator can already solve the problem, that it doesn't even get to the founder. So that's what a lot of times, that's really probably the biggest reason why, actually, is because the translators already understand the culture, understand the heart behind so much, that they can already put out the fire before it really builds out to anything like that beyond being small. So yes, absolutely.
That's really good. That's super good. Thank you, man. Last category, I'm going to just kind of hit it, and then I'll let you, clean it up or finish it up. But a translator is really valuable to get the culture onto the calendar. This has probably been the last 2 or 3 years of my own team leadership. One of the biggest leaps, kind of quantum leaps, that I've seen in my own leadership is the ability to identify the culture we're going for.
Yeah.
And then put it into the calendar. If we don't have this skill set, we are risking unintended hypocrisy.
Yeah.
because we say we value this, but we have no recent evidence that this is our culture.
Yeah.
So we say we value this, but the last example of that value was 7 years ago.
Yeah.
So where are we actively practicing in, even if it's just seed form,
Yeah.
even if you're just doing, sometimes teams or organizations, they have symbolic habits because they can't do what they see themselves doing in the future just yet. And so they're taking that first step. They're doing something in our space, we might call this like a seed, right? Where you're planting a seed with this expectation of it growing and multiplying later on. And so we're constantly trying to seed the culture, not just in our conversations and not just in our, collaboration, but we're also trying to seed the culture into the calendar itself. I say, until you put something on the calendar, you're just vision casting.
Yeah.
But when you put something on the calendar, you're actually leading.
Yeah.
You start leading people when it's on the calendar, and you're leading them to take action. You're leading them to show up. You're leading them to make that commitment with you. There's a big shift that happens as a translator to say, this is what we say we value, and here's the evidence of it in the next 3 months. You're going to see, like if we have 3 or 4 or 5 values, you're going to see evidence of each of these values. Some things, like sometimes we have larger gatherings, we're able to practice more than one value at the same time. So like in our context, when we gather as a church community, we're able to do, all 3 or 4 values in the same setting because we have a few hours and we have different teams functioning and we're kind of all humming together. But then there are times where there's only one value. Like let's say one of your values is time with the Lord, right? Yeah. And so we don't get to do all of the values at the same time, but that is one value that we want to grow in and that we want to make space for. And so we put that value on the calendar. And so knowing high level, what are our values, and then ground level, where does it show up on the calendar is so important. And what happens is the danger, specifically for translators, right? The idea of getting lost in translation. When something is lost in translation, it's because there's too many references that's being just said that don't make sense in the new context. So, for example, you're rattling off some phrases, like we've got phrases in the South that other cultures don't understand. It's like, well, Lord willing, and the creek don't rise. It's like, what does that mean? Like I don't know how other translations, spaces wouldn't understand that, and then you're just kind of like going, and it gets lost in translation. Yeah. Maybe there's a thing you say and it rhymes in your language, but it doesn't rhyme in their language. Yeah. And so they miss the punch, they miss the joke, or they miss the emphasis there. And what happens is the things that are so moving to us in a vision casting space get lost in translation on the calendar. Yep. And then it's cluttered. The calendar can get cluttered, and it's not heartwarming anymore. It's a headache, and it's not moving. It's draining, and it's not intentional. It becomes reactive. And so translators have to guard the calendar. They are the custodian, the warrior at the gate that says, hey, that doesn't translate into what we need to do in the next 90 days.
Yeah.
And so what are you finding? What are you learning about how do you actually translate a culture, things that we say we value, into a calendar perspective?
Yeah. Well, I think probably the best way to say it honestly, I'm going to use your saying is you schedule your values, just like what you're saying. When you schedule your values, it really it reinforces all of those things. It strengthens those things. It gives people awareness. Okay, this is important, and I'm seeing now the why behind it over time. I'm seeing okay, wow, this is important. But I would say, along those lines, also uh, putting just really practical is just the word deadline. I mean, the just putting a deadline to something, and that doesn't, I know that can mean sometimes like ultimatum to some people, but I don't necessarily believe that. I think it depends on the situation. I think certain things, especially once you schedule an event on a certain day, yeah, I mean it's kind of ultimatum. It's already set. But like, whether it's a project progress report or whatever it is, I do think deadlines. It's just natural. People see that and they have action to they have action to it. So like you're saying, it goes from idea to action when it's on the calendar. There is no way to get action like it can be on a calendar. So uh like there's something we try to do that my fiance and I are in charge of is our connect class. And there is no action like knowing on the every other month on that particular Sunday that it is going to happen, whether I'm in the mood or not. It's going to happen, and that is also like a great example of something that's important, that has value, that it's easy to you don't have to think about all the time, but when it does come around, it's important. So so that's something for me, like that's just like a personal great example of where you translate culture into the calendar, because we value new people at our church. We value people wanting to make this their church home, and those people are important. So we are going to put our culture into action, our culture into the calendar. And so there's no action that you'll get when you put it into a calendar. So
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. This has been such a helpful and enjoyable conversation. Thank you, Josh, for just investing your time into us. I definitely want you to jump back on, and it'd be cool to do even like a collab with 2 or 3 of us, and then just keep multiplying this. But I want you to take some time and explain this book project you're working on. This has been something that you've been wanting to do for a while. I know you're, speaking of due dates, you have a due date. You got 39 days until your wedding. And so you've made that a hard line. You have plenty of motivation to knock it out. But tell us, what's the book about, and where can we stay in touch with you?
Well, the book is about really encouraging people when they're single to go after God, and I know a lot of people still do, but I talked a little bit about dreaming, and I do think that's something that the Lord's talked to me about, and about never limiting your dream to just what's in your hand. We think of real simply the miracle of feeding the 5,000, and the disciples had to go and feed a hungry crowd with a very small amount of food, and they wouldn't have been able to do that in their own strength, but God blessed them to do it. And so I just believe our lives are supposed to be like that. We're unlimited when we're with God, and we shouldn't dream little just because you're single, and you should dream big. And God is the dream fulfiller. He's the dream and the dream fulfiller. So that's what it's going to be about. It'll hopefully come out in about 28 days. I'm going to make that my goal.
You got to buffer a little bit. Yeah.
My deadline, I'm putting it on the calendar. And, but thank you, Peter, so much for having me on. This has been awesome. I feel like I was everywhere. So hopefully I made sense, but I, this always challenges me because again, I'm talking about culture and language, and I have 4 pages of notes now that I can always go back to look at. So it's awesome. This is awesome.
Is so powerful, man. I think this is why we need more Future Fridays.
Yeah.
Future Fridays help us take field trips to the future so we can stay future focused and not get discouraged, distracted, or definitely not disqualified. We stay with it, and that's what leaders need to be living out. Joshua, where I'm going to put this up, this might be fake news. Is this where people can find you?
You can just take away the UA, just Josh Callender.
Sorry, okay, gotcha. Let me update that. Guys, if you want, keep up with Josh Callender on Instagram, and obviously check out the work their team is doing, Dwelling Place Church in the greater Houston area. Bro, thank you so much. This has been great. I really just have to call it to be continued. Yeah. And I'm even excited about working with you a little bit after this on your own leadership. But guys, remember, you're going places, so prepare to go there. See you later.